Hi, everyone. I just wanted to make sure that we have a little bit of a sound check to make sure that everybody can see and hear us. So if you guys can just raise your hand if you see and hear us okay. Anybody? Gerald, can you hear me? Yeah, all right. So I can see that you guys can hear me as well. So let me just start with welcome to the OST webinar, Waiting for RFPs. Now it's the time to fill your opportunities pipeline. And I'm here with Gerald Jones. I'm going to introduce him in a minute, but just a little bit of information as far as the logistics and the noises and everything else. As you know, everybody's working from home. We're not in our office, we're in the home. In my particular case, I'm going to mute myself, but I have a toddler here and a dog, and it gets real fun at the times of COVID-19 to actually try to do this. So we apologize in advance, and hope you guys cut us some slack from that perspective. And hopefully we have good connection there, and we'll get started. So welcome to Waiting for RFPs. Now is the time to fill the opportunities pipeline. Gerald, if you can advance the slide. So just tell you a little bit about the presenter. We have here Gerald Everett Jones. He's been a consultant with our company since 2011. So he's managed major proposals and business analysis projects in the government, healthcare, and commercial sectors. And he's got over 20 years of experience doing proposals. He's been an author, editor, volume lead, proposal manager, strategic advisor. So he has a lot of knowledge in this arena. I'll be here in the background to help out with answering any questions as well. So you have me as a resource moderating this webinar, but it's going to be Gerald. So let's go ahead and move on just a little bit further. Gerald, in the presentation. So just a little bit about us before we dive into the content. OST Global Solutions, we've won our clients over $22 billion in government contracts since 2005. And we do serve our clients in a variety of different ways. So the first one is consulting. We actually help you with the pipeline development, with capturing opportunities, with winning proposals, and even optimizing your processes. We also have training, Bid and Proposal Academy, and we have a lot of public classes, 14 public courses in all aspects of federal business development, either foundations or advanced courses. And we also have a registered apprenticeship in government business development, which allows you to get certified by the Department of Labor, this real licensing certification body that actually exists in the field of labor certification. So they are actually behind that. So it's a nationwide credential in government business development. So we have that apprenticeship if you guys are interested. It's a year-long process in this. If you have employees that you want to send to that, or yourself to actually go through that. And we also have a virtual and co-working incubator for small government contractors, for very small companies under $2 million, actually under 5 really. Some of our members are a little bit bigger than that. That's where you can learn the ropes of government contracting as well. So Gerald, if you can move forward.
Well, thank you, Alicia.
So I will turn this over to Gerald and pass the baton. So just make sure that you have your sound turned on, Gerald, and I'll mute myself.
Okay. Thank you. Well, our government has been busy.
I still cannot hear you.
You cannot hear me.
I can hear Gerald.
Have you got me turned on?
No sound.
Gerald, I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Are we good?
All right. So Gerald. All right. So you can hear Gerald. Okay. So it's just me. All right. So let's go ahead, Gerald, and proceed.
Yes. Okay. Here's what we're going to cover. Well, our government has been busy. It may seem as though for existing contracts, ongoing contracts, that the can's getting kicked down the road as it has been before with sequestration and shutdowns and whatever, but actually on ongoing contracts, they've been very busy changing the rules, and in many cases, loosening up the guidelines so that, especially on indefinite delivery vehicles, payments can be made in greater amounts or quicker, get things kick-started, keep things going. And so we'll be discussing how to research those kinds of things. And then there are short-term opportunities for COVID-19. The government has spent, committed at least 4.9 billion at last report on new opportunities, and we're going to be talking about some of those areas. And then in a larger context, of course, there are the economic predictions that the entire economy, analogous to, say, 1945, is going to undergo some major sector shifts. Some capital will be flowing into different sectors, priorities will be changed, and these are changes that are likely to be with us for quite some time. And now is an excellent time to be surveying, data drilling, researching those changes and opportunities, and we'll point you in that direction. But also to populate your sales pipeline, and we're going to give you some specific techniques and even metrics on how to make decisions in not only how many bids you follow and which bids you follow, but which ones will be most profitable for you to submit and grow your business. So we will be implementing a process to build and manage an opportunities pipeline. We have a formal OST holistic development approach that we'll be sharing with you. It may be very similar to approaches that you've used, but this also has some tips and tricks from our experience in not only in consulting, but also in training and getting feedback from you guys. Our pipeline calculator is a specific formula for developing a metric that will tell you just how much in terms of dollar volume you need to be bidding in order to expand your company and hit your goals. And then we have a bid, no bid decision framework, which actually culminates in a worksheet. We'll be walking you through that worksheet to calculate. It's like a gate review. It gives you an empirical way to decide which bids you're actually going to submit with the highest chance of winning. And in the email that we'll be sending out as a follow-up from this presentation, we're going to give you an opportunity to download that spreadsheet, so you don't have to copy it down. The business development lifecycle, this is a 30,000-foot view that of the process that we've developed over the years, and the one that we teach. And of course, we're beginning with building your company's capacity to do business with the government. And no matter where you are on the curve of intending to bid or currently performing contracts or looking to expand your business, perhaps by bolting on subcontractors or entering new areas, the survey of resources is really a crucial place to begin because, number one, in a very elementary area, you've got to be DCA compliant with your accounting practices, and you need to undergo an audit and get certification. Well, part of that is you're going to need to be able to research the GSA labor categories, make sure that your labor rates align with, they don't have to be exactly the same as, but they have to be within a range. And, you have to know the difference between, is this fellow an engineer level 3 or this woman a scientist level 5? These, and how are you going to bid those people? Who's on your team? Perhaps where are your gaps? Also, financing, and of course, the financing opportunities are changing daily here with government subsidy and assistance programs, and researching those and how those might plug into your business. There's actually some changes in the FAR in the regulations, and those happen on a daily basis, and those will be affecting how you prime your business for opportunities. So you want to make sure you're ready. Then conducting strategic business development planning. This comes down to your own corporate infrastructure, your own reach back, the amount of resources that you're developing, you're assigning to your development activities, and the resources that you're planning to line up to actually fulfill the resources that you're fulfill the opportunities that you're going to be bidding. Then as to market research, this is where the data drilling comes in, and I think this is really, we can show you some very productive ways of getting at the information that you need. And it's amazing, you know, if you're performing on a government contract, you're performing in Macy's window. You're going to be, if you haven't looked into this before, you're going to be astounded at how much data on you and your competitors the government puts out there for everybody to see. Then, you know, you're going to come down to the decision point. Do you have enough information to make decisions? Clearly, this is an iterative process. This is brainstorming that's being done within your business development group. And, you know, also the amount of information that you gather is going to be important before there's an RFI, before there's a sources sought. If you're waiting for those to happen, you could be spending your time productively anticipating which those are. And we're going to show you some techniques and some processes to do that. So if you do have enough information, do feel enough ready to go forward, then marketing to the federal government and partners, you know, you've got, if you're a small business, you may be thinking about, okay, am I ready to prime? Who am I going to pick as a sub to fill my gaps? I'm going to want some large business subs possibly to grow not only the volume of my business, but also my credibility. But as a prime, am I ready to do 51% of the work share, which is the requirement for a prime? So I've got to have enough resource within my organization. And your marketing, how is that reach out going to occur? If I can't attend industry days and look around facilities and I'm in a virtual world, how am I going to hook up with those customers? How am I going to gain what we call customer intimacy? And that marketing is a huge effort in itself, and it's an ongoing thing. It can happen, you know, years before the proposal that you actually bid. So then our focus for today, our particular focus in terms of the processes and techniques that we're going to introduce you to, will be building and managing the opportunities pipeline itself. Okay, and we'll talk about the sales funnel, the idea that, you know, maybe a large amount of opportunities come under your view, but, you know, you've got to somehow narrow those down to the handful that you can apply resources to, commit to, and ultimately bid. And then the qualifying each opportunity in terms of its risk and reward, in terms of your competitive position, and again, the likelihood of whether you're likely to win. And once we get through those gates, then, you know, we're ready to get into capture management, preparing proposal, and developing your business during the project execution, because part of the proposal and your SME team, of course, you're likely to be using as SMEs the people that you're actually going to field if you win the proposal. And so this all becomes a matter of feedback as you're generating reports and metrics to the customer that's being accumulated as part of your past performance. And, you know, that's what you're going to cite in your comparable contracts that you're going to bid in the future. So again, step 5, building and managing an opportunities pipeline, qualifying each individual opportunity, and very important, at each iteration of these steps, you're checking for the strategic fit, not only with what you think fits in your wheelhouse, what you think ends up being solid competition and aggressive competition, but also the strategic fit for how your leadership wants to grow your business, what areas you want to specialize in, conquer, excel in, innovate in, and what partnerships do you want to develop so that you become industry leader in whatever it is that you're offering. So keeping up with online research and newsletters as our first step, keeping up with changes due to COVID-19 relief for new opportunities. An example here, there are new procurement flexibilities that are being issued almost on a daily basis. The federal acquisition regulations are being modified. The intent on the good side is the government wants to make it easier and quicker for contracting officers and program managers to spend money. The ceilings have been lifted, the amounts have been increased, and these are guidelines that exist as class deviations, which if you are an existing contractor, you're going to get as bulletins. But if it's a contract that you might be going after, a contract that might be expiring or being modified, it will take some data drilling and some research to find these, and we'll show you some sources for it. But the flexibilities include the increases to the micro-purchase threshold, the simplified acquisition threshold, and the threshold for using simplified procedures for certain commercial items. And so those ceilings have been raised, 10 to 20,000 for domestic purchases, 30,000 for purchases outside the US, and $250,000 to $750,000 for domestic purchases and 1.5 million for simplified acquisitions. So these are this makes it easier for the government to inject money, especially if you're under an indefinite delivery vehicle and where there's some flexibility, especially in commodities purchasing. They want to get it quick, and they won't have to go through quite so much paperwork. And the agencies may use simplified acquisition procedures for up to 13 million for purchases of commercial item buys. So if you're involved in the supply chain of computers, supplies, equipment, vehicles, those kinds of things, that would probably apply. One place to go in your initial research survey would be the cgp.org. This is a government, this is not a government, this is a industry association website. And one of the things that I found when I went here, if you scroll down, you can see the changes by agency. And below Congress here, I found OSHA. And this might be considered rather primary information, but it was one of the things that I thought was interesting. There's a set of OSHA guidelines published on preparing workplaces for return to work. And what they did was they took the SARS virus guidelines and they updated them for coronavirus. And so this is important in terms of, if you've got a contract obligation to be on site for some kind of critical function, or if you have to set up a SCIF in order to do classified work, and there will still be some of that required, even though it will be modified for VPN perhaps, or all kinds of other safeguards. Then you want to know how your facilities must be upgraded, but then also you want to see how the rest of the world is expected to, if you've got a military supply chain warehouse, what has to go on there in order for operations to continue. So that's that kind of information. And so the near-term opportunities, things that you may not be performing now that you might want to look at as some of these emergency expenditures, which might be available as new contract issues, emergency acquisitions. And as I say, in some of these areas, the commitment so far is 4.9 billion. It's likely to be a lot more. So healthcare and healthcare logistics, of course, medical supplies, of course, but supply chain all over. In the military, we had the Corps of Engineers setting up emergency tents near Javits Center. This was the kind of thing that may be expanding, may be needed. We're not going to necessarily know on a week-to-week basis, but these kinds of opportunities are going to drop. Cybersecurity, because it's not that necessarily our network activity is going to increase, it's that it's going to be occurring in different places, and some of these are not necessarily secured places. We have incidences of Zoom bombing, and in response to that, just a couple of weeks ago, Zoom tightened up their security procedures to prevent just that. So, but also, you've got cash transfers, banking. All these electronic payments are going to be going to consumers. So. And then, of course, cyber security in terms of just messaging and tasking within the government, because the government is rapidly adapting for telework, as I know your organizations are as well. And then, as we mentioned, facilities compliance, cleaning services, sanitization, emergency provisioning. These are all going to be part of the world going forward, and it's going to be changing on a daily basis. So you got to be drilling for data every day. Now, Bloomberg Government, excellent site for not only getting news, but also forecasts of what's going to change and in what sectors. And so here we're going to give you some examples, and you're going to get this deck later. You don't have to copy it down now, but here are some sites that are going to be helpful for you in terms of doing your data drilling. And it's very important to, of course, we all look at what was FedBizOps, but now it's betasam.gov. That's where the RFPs drops, the RFPs drop, the drafts, the sources sought, the RFIs. This is what we're watching all the time. But we've all been in hurry up mode, where the first time we saw anything about the contract, maybe we hadn't been doing our business development and pipeline as diligently as we should, because we were all working on a deadline. Okay, suddenly there's a draft RFP and we decide we want to respond. That's too late. Now, that's not to say we can't apply diligent processes and win it, but we'll be a whole lot better off if we saw that train coming and we were doing some advanced research at these other sites. And we're going to just now do an online demonstration of usaspending.gov, which is a government site. And this is where some of that research can be done very productively. So here we're on usaspending.gov, and we want to go into award search, advanced search. And if you can see there on the left-hand side, this is the search box where you're going to enter your criteria. And so the emphasis here, and this would be our recommendation, is go after especially competitive information on competitors that are either directly competing with you now, or those that are comparable or in comparable performance areas. So let's pick 5 fiscal years, because contract duration typically 3 to 5. Award type, let's pick contracts and indefinite delivery vehicles. And agencies, okay, timely perhaps DHS, Department of Homeland Security, we'll pick them. And let's go down here to NAICS code. I'll just enter one we know well, 541512, computer systems design. Okay, and we'll click search. Okay, so now the hits are coming up. If you notice by that right-hand column, they're coming in descending order of award amount, okay? And, I don't know about you, but I'm probably not ready to go after a $500 million contract. So let me come down here. Okay, I think maybe 60 billion or 60 million might be in my wheelhouse. If you'll excuse that expression, it might be overused. But I see here that Accenture Federal Services has got this contract now. Here's the contract number. And if I click on that, I can see start date, end date. So I know when this is expiring, okay? I know when this is likely to be recomputed. And I can see that they've already burned through this much. This is their earned value. I can see how much they've already burned through on this contract, how much is left to be awarded or tasked. Okay, so total funding obligated. We've got these kinds of metrics, very valuable, but especially valuable here. Look at this, transaction history. Every time they had a contract mod, every time they got a payment, every time the government exercised an option because either they were performing well or they had new requirements. It's all here. This is Macy's window. You're going to be able to peek into what your competitors have done. And then also come down here, competition details. Okay, I've got all this information on the type of company that it is. If I, Accenture, okay, we know who they are, but this may be some competitor you never heard of before, but they're actually doing this stuff that you could be doing, and you're going to be able to research them as an incumbent. And then if you go up here to recipient details, here's all their SAM information, of course. And if you research yourself, you're going to find the same thing. So first thing you want to do maybe is find out what the government is saying about you. So that's a site. If you don't have experience with it, we really encourage you to do that, because as you're going to see in a moment, the competitive research is really the core of the drilling that we're going to encourage you to be doing. And now here is our, again, a 30,000 foot view of the OST holistic development approach for filling and maintaining your pipeline. And again, this may be something that we haven't felt like we've had time to do, the resources to do. We've been chasing rockets, maybe literally, and we've been all worried about the next proposal deadline. But we really need to take, especially now, if we've got some bandwidth and we've got some time to do some online research, and also do some brainstorming among our team, and perhaps even resource our team, perhaps even add some members to our team, because we know we've got some SME gaps that we want to fill. So as we go over here, we're going to see the first thing you want to do, review market research and strategic planning results. So this is where you're doing a lot of data drilling, and you're going to try to look at, as we say, your competitors. What are your competitors doing? We also want to see, what is the market doing? Is capital spending moving from metal bending to healthcare? Is healthcare big data? Of course, there have been mandates for government expansion. How's that going? CIO, Social Security, Medicare, all of that. There's everything from small to large. I mean, at the small level, there's providing desktop equipment to to service centers, all that kind of thing. So analyzing competitors and consumers and competitors, customers, and opportunities. Again, this may not be your core business as you have performed it. Your universe may be changing, may be shifting, and new opportunity areas. There may be areas of performance that your leadership has been thinking about going into. Well, now's the time to do that research to find whether that area might be pumped up. Okay, and so applying your company's strategic objectives in terms of not only dollar volume, but also task areas and performance areas, you may develop an ideal opportunity criteria. We would like to go after a contract that's about 5 million. We'd like it to be within maybe a larger indefinite delivery vehicle, perhaps that has a large business prime that's noted for being an industry leader in the area that we want to go into. And dropping out of that will be a list of keywords. And again, this is going to be iterative. It's going to go back to your data drilling and your research. So you've got much better refined keywords, and of course you can look for keyword metrics. There are browser tools and research tools that will tell you how many users and searchers are hitting these particular keywords, and which keywords are the most popular on the search engines for these industries. So then down select to specific customers of focus. So these will be the agencies, these will be the divisions, These will be perhaps even the commercial large businesses that are priming or doing innovative research or pioneering work or principal performance in those areas. And identify expiring contracts. Well, we just saw in USA spending, you're going to be, once you drill into those contract numbers, you're going to see exactly when they're expiring. You're seeing exactly how much their burn rate, their earned value has been, and how close that is in terms of both dollars and time to when that will be expiring. Now, if those contracts are expiring and the government feels that it's going to be expeditious to kick that can down the road to simply renew the contract, that's good news and bad news. Okay, that is good news for the incumbents because they're going to have their contract extended. The FAR rules might be changed a bit, but they won't be a lot. But from the standpoint of the recompete down the road, that creates a lot more vulnerabilities for the incumbent because number one, the terms and conditions of existing contract may be outdated already. And so if they're extended, they're going to be borderline dysfunctional in the future. The technology that the contract is based on, if it's legacy technology and that technology is getting to end of life, that is going to create an incredible opportunity on the recompete for innovation, new technology, refresh, reset. And then also the incumbent performance. If that technology, if that contract gets extended simply for the sake, let's say, of convenience or efficiency in the near term, then if that incumbent is not performing up to standard and the customer has been dissatisfied with that, the pain points are only going to increase. So if you can identify what those pain points are, you're going to be ready at the recompete to go in there and target exactly what the pain points and the win themes are going to be of your proposal. And then you're going to identify the announcements. If you're watching, again, some of those sites, betasam.gov, of course, in terms of sources sought and RFIs, but also some of these other sites, the Bloomberg and some of the others, those CGP that we mentioned, you're going to be able to see some distant early warning on what might be coming out. So then you'll proceed to, let's go with a lower track with network and market, personal connections, social media events, and prospecting. Here's where the fact that industry days might not be held, customer meetings might not be available at facilities. You're going to have to think of ways to reach out. You're going to have to think of ways to contact, especially if these are agencies that you haven't dealt with before. One way would be, all right, if we have an innovation and we've got a SME, talented SME, you can do a white paper on it. Let's see what trade magazines those people read, and let's see if we can get that white paper out there. Let's see if we can't participate in webinars like this, or deliver webinars to special interest areas where we've got perhaps a mailing list of potential contract officers or program managers, especially program managers within agencies that would be interested in the technology that we're developing and have to offer. So then we come to a decision point. Is this an opportunity or a contract? Now, an opportunity is going to be, we think that there's going to be a contract coming down the pike for this. It isn't necessarily an expiry or an existing contract, but we think there's a business need and we think we know what it is. So that's going to take us to the north end of this triangle, okay? But if instead we don't really know what the opportunity is, but we've identified a customer that we can talk to, that takes us through to the contact side of this, the eastern arrow, okay? And if we've identified a contact, we want to develop that contact and add that series of initiations, those reach outs, those electronic meetings, those phone conversations, even if we can, to add that contact to the ongoing conversation, because customer intimacy is going to look like a whole new process now going forward. So continuing through this, I'm going to skip ahead to the other aspects, especially of our metrics, because I want to get to those, be sure to get to those. But remember here throughout this process, clean and edit the pipeline weekly, because that means you're iteratively going back into it. And if you're not coming out of the other side of this with being able to bid monthly, perhaps your pipeline isn't full enough. So the pipeline, as we picture it, as we teach it, is you've got a universe of leads, thousands of opportunities out there in your data drilling, and you're going to through your analysis, through this process, bring that down to perhaps a few hundred leads that you might be aware of, that you might be tracking.
Hey, Gerald,
and then,
Gerald, 1 second. Can you please reposition your mic? All right, cool. All right, just make sure.
how's that? Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Sorry. So yes, this is going to come down to a filtering process where you're basically going to eliminate the opportunities that are either too big, too small, not in your technical area, not with the agencies that you think that you want to be approaching. And for step 2, we're going to show you the opportunities pipeline the opportunity pipeline process. And then in step 3, the pipeline calculator, the formula that you can apply to actually determine how many opportunities you need to be chasing to grow your business. And that's this. Okay, we've got, and again, you're going to get this deck. Your desired bookings. Okay, my business has determined, in conversations with my CEO and my business development people over the next year, and this would be 1 year, 5 years. You'll determine the span, but you probably want to bring it down to the next year in terms of your initial calculation. We want to book $20 million of business, okay? And we multiply that by the reciprocal of our win rate. And in the past, we look at our past performance, and we have won a third of the proposals that we have put out. So that's 0.33. We're dividing by 0.33, and we need to be chasing, we need to be bidding $60 million worth of business. That's how much we need looking in our pipeline, and we can have a mix there. Some 10 million, some 20 million, some 5, and the dollar volume will determine which and how many that we want to be looking at and going after. Now, if you don't know what your win rate is, obviously think about it conservatively. If you haven't won any, okay, figure it's 10%, because you're going to win some, because you're going to be improving your processes, we hope. Okay, so then in the 4th step, we're going to come down to what we call our bid, no bid decision framework. And here you're going to be determining in your gate reviews exactly which proposals you're going to be bidding. It might come down to half a dozen. And it's based, the numbers, the metrics that we're going to assign, the percentages, the evaluations are based on this quad chart, where in the lower left corner at 0, 0, this is or 10 out of 10, actually. We'll get to that. This is a sweet spot for a prime bid. This is where the customer knows us, or we know the customer very well. The customer has confidence in us. And this is based on past performance. This is stuff we've done before. This is stuff we have innovations for that the customer is aware of. And then we go up to the top right corner, don't bid. This is where we don't know the customer at all. This is a different task area, performance area that we've never performed in. We don't have any past experience, and there's nobody who wants to team with us. So as we get down to our calculator, here's the meat of it, and this is the spreadsheet that you'll have an opportunity to get. You're going to be populating with numbers these last 3 columns, and if you go down the far left column, yes, the far left column, bid considerations. These will be unique to your business. These are just suggestions, but these are solid categories to use and ones that we found have been productive. Number one, our ability to respond. Do we have the resources available to bid this? Background experience and technical capability. Do we have past performance to cite? Do we have the SMEs on board to be able to do this? If not, where can we get them? Can we hire them? Can we subcontract? Can we team? Proposed team and personnel. This gets down to individuals. Who do we need? A program manager for this? Do we need a technical lead, quality control, administrative support? What is the performing team that we need? Do we know enough about that to be able to identify these people, even as individuals or as keys? Pricing strategy. Do we suspect that we're offering a commodity item where it's going to be all lowest price? Or is this a really difficult thing to do where price reasonableness is going to be more the criterion and maybe price won't be quite as important? I mean, obviously, we want to hit the nail on the head, but you don't want to be the lowest bidder on something that's very high risk. Customer knowledge and support. How well do we understand this agency? How well understand how our competitors have performed at this agency? Competition, who's competing there now? Who's performing? Is there an incumbent? Who has responded to sources sought? Those people are listed on the responses to sources sought. And again, the industry day, they might have attended, they might have registered on betasam.gov that they're interested in this opportunity. Market intelligence, what is going on in the business area, in the area of business needs within the government? For example, a lot of these agencies have computer architecture 5 and 10-year plans. Where are they at in terms of that? Evolution and what they're going to be required and expected to do. Are companies' resources available for the proposal? How much are we prepared to spend in time and materials to actually develop this document? This is going to take 30 to 45, maybe 60 days, depending upon the proposal period from the final, and then the draft. I mean, we might be working 6 months ahead. Do we have the resources to commit to that? Facilities, are we going to have to provide facilities as part of this contract? Will there be a PMO required? Will there be laboratories required? Are we going to be required to administer the customer's laboratories? What's there? And again, without industry days, without the ability to walk around, this could be challenging, but we need to know it because the contract may be for when people come back. Program's potential strategic advantages. This has to do with our company's mission, how we intend to grow. Is this in our sweet spot? Is this what we want to conquest and conquer? So as an example, let's pick competition, okay? And you're going to populate each of the rows, but let's just pick competition for now. If the customer has an open mind, if the customer isn't prejudiced against us, may be receptive to our past performance, we think we know how to beat the competition, we've got a fair advantage, let's give ourselves a C+, a 6, okay, 6 out of 10. In the B, consideration weight, now we've got 10, if you go back to the spreadsheet, you'll see we've got 10 factors there. We could have a dozen, we could have 15. I mean, this is not, you don't necessarily have to use our list. But because we had 10 factors, and this is 1 out of 10, for the sake of our first round iteration, we've said competition is 1/10 of the consideration. If this were, say, this had a strong incumbent, we might weight this competition factor differently. We might give more consideration. Or if we have a section M from a prior competition that is giving us the government's weightings on these factors, we would be able to maybe give a different number for this. So we're going to multiply the consideration rating against the consideration weight, the net score, 0.6 here. If we go back and we look on the far right column, the sum of all these is 6 for this particular example, okay? And we see bids to pursue, if it's greater than or equal to 7, that's our sweet spot. That's where we're more likely to win. This is our go, no go. And we can do this before we decide to develop the proposal. We can do it iteratively while we're going through the proposal. And we know some customers even apply this right after Pink Team to see whether to hit the send button on that proposal. This is what we've covered for you today. We're going to open up for question and answer. If you have questions, we encourage you to type them in the chat box, lower right corner of your GoToMeeting screen. And we're open to your questions and comments.
I have a question here that says, is there a way to know who responded to sources sought notices? And I don't believe so, Gerald, right? So I have never seen that, correct?
Well, what you have as a result of the RFI, well, actually even before the RFI, you have a posting of the companies that have registered their interest. And that was the way it was on FedBizOps. I would be willing to believe. I haven't looked on beta.sam.gov. I haven't looked at the new implementation, but now it's voluntary to list yourself. So it's a strategic decision. Do I want to put my name up there and advertise to everybody that I'm actually interested? So that's a strategic consideration. But one of the things that I've seen on that is if you've got some familiarity with the competitors and you kind of know their gap analysis, you can begin to kind of guess who's going to team with each other to compete against you. And I know of one specific situation where, they had a staff augmentation agency combined with an engineering agency because they didn't have the admin chops to be able to wrangle those engineers. And I knew exactly who those were from the interested parties list.
All right, so let's see here. Do you assist new businesses getting started in government contracting, special requirement? And the answer is yes, we do. There are some things that you would need to do. There's some steps that you would need to take, like register in sam.gov. But the question is then, how do you create that initial pipeline and all the steps? We do have the GovCon incubator that would help you with those tasks and actually show you the ropes in government contracting. So that may be the best way for you to do it rather than consulting solutions. If you would like to, we can follow up with you after this webinar and help you out with that. I have another
company profile.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep. The company profile is crucial because not only is it required for sam.gov and it will end up being public information, but these other sites that, especially if it's like a government site, DoD acquisitions, for example, if you've got a company profile, you want to make sure that you've registered as a user on the site, your company profile is up there so that you're receiving the regular bulletins that relate to your area of interest.
Right. And somebody says here, I don't have any questions, but this was great information. Are you going to share the deck as well so we can have for notes? And the answer is yes, we will share the deck. Here's a question here. Beta.sam.gov does not appear to have the same function as FedBizOps had. Oh, yeah.
Who was the knucklehead who put that together? Government websites.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh.
Isn't it wonderful?
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's going to evolve, and it's going to take some evolution, and I would expect that you want to pay attention to it, even if there isn't something you're actively interested in at the moment, because that site is going to evolve. And stuff's going to be in different places. I mean, it's like porting any website, you know, even a commercial website that moves, it's like, well, suddenly the Q&A is in a different tab or whatever, and you know, it's just, hey, the nature of the web.
All right, let's see here. I have, the regarding interested vendors list. I think that they are adding and fixing a lot of functionality. It just may take a lot of time. So there's, in beta.sam, they just have a much simpler portal right now. And the bigger problem with it is not just the search functionality and finding the right information that's harder. It's the fact that the data didn't port over exactly the same way that it should have. So all of these different databases that you use like Govlin and Easy GovOps and Bloomberg and all of these guys and DASs, they all had to struggle with how they get information in because the same contracts didn't map out. And a lot of government agencies couldn't post for the longest to beta.sam.gov because they just put the data columns, the data names, data categories completely different. And so none of that has matched. And they're fixing that slowly and painfully. So the way that was done was really, really bad. So you guys are kind of seeing the ramifications of that, and it's going to be broken, I think, I'm afraid, for a while.
Yeah.
Now,
I would expect the evolution of industry days. I would expect the evolution of however they're going to, there'll have to be a virtual counterpart to industry days and to the sources sought activities. And I would expect as those evolve, the whole interested vendors aspect of it will get refined. And again, that's going to be Meetup, Hangout, you know, those kinds of tools.
Yep. Now, here's a question from Sandeep. What steps would you advise to know more information on forecast contracts and steps to work on them? I think, Sandeep, what you're really asking, if I understand correctly, is how do you really, are you asking if you could clarify forecast contracts and step to work on them and say, agencies are posting the forecasts. There are different databases that essentially separate out the COVID related work, if that's what you're asking for. But I know that your company specifically does staffing work. So the question is, where in those areas are the emerging kind of contracts that you can find? If that's your question, then I would really look at the tools that are specifically, look at FedBizOps and look for those search terms. The FedBizOps, but beta.sam.gov, and actually look for that information. Look at the state level because you do a lot of state work. Look at the state level to see what kind of procurement opportunities actually exist on that level, and just dedicate a lot of time to that research. Now, as far as just jumping in general, all the steps that Gerald has talked about today are valid. But where do you actually find opportunities? He's shown you the USAspending.gov. That is an absolutely free website put on by the US government. A lot of people don't know about it, but it's wonderful, wonderful. And it basically gets the information from the federal procurement data system and other sources, and it gives it to you in a way that you can actually digest, because as you know, FPDS is terrible to work with. And you also need to look at the agency for opportunity forecasts. They publish them annually, and those are the opportunities. So you look for expired contracts in USA spending. You look for the forecasted opportunities at the agency websites. All you need to do is go into that agency's website, go into search box and type in procurement forecast or something like that, and it should take you to that file if you don't want to look there. So it's a lot easier to find that way. And start monitoring opportunities as they come out that are published as RFIs, as the sources sought, as the notices that they actually put out. And then, of course, if you're on the forefront and working with a client, then they'll feed your pipeline as well. All the steps that Gerald has talked about. Hopefully, I've answered the questions.
And I would definitely go after, large business primes also in terms of staffing, because, Lockheed's got on the website, they've got a place for a potential vendor registration, and then they've got a qualification process that leads you through, if they see a gap, then they're going to tell you you've got to correct this before you can do business with us. General Dynamics has gone into healthcare big data in a huge way, and that's going to be a much more significant part of their business. Northrop has declared that they are the cyber experts and be building the next secure internet. So I mean, these I think are part of the economic shifts that are going to go on, where there are going to be cash flows, capital flows, and then wealth flows to different sectors, because our priorities as a country and as a world are really going to shift. They're comparing it to right after World War II.
Yeah, the shifting, that's what the experts are predicting, is really what is the shifting. I mean, right now we're in the government contracting industry, and it is considered probably one of the best sectors to be in, unless you're Amazon, I don't know.
Well, the idea that the government's going to be small is a fantasy, because
Yeah.
there's none of this is going to change in a positive way without the government being involved in it with major initiatives.
So the government contractor.
I'm reminded of that commercial about at Hoover Dam, and pointed behind and said, "Well, we did that."
Absolutely. And so in that sense, I think that we're in a really good position as government contractors to really dive into the market and to take advantage of that. But I think it's really important that everybody takes the steps. Now, I have a question here for Prashant, and a lot of times when you respond to as a source of sought or an RFI, how do we know where the solicitation is going to, where the solicitation is going to drop? A lot of the times the agency does not announce this, and it may be too late sometimes to find out where it dropped. Let me tackle this first, and then I'll let Gerald add to it. So yes, you don't know. So they'll publish a source of sought, and then they will try to move it to some sort of a vehicle, because if an existing contracting vehicle is a way for government to bypass all of the different steps that they have to go through, any kind of full and open procurement or sources, set aside a competitive procurement. So they will look for a GSA schedule. They will look for a vehicle, like an IDIQ vehicle that the agency has, or anything else that they could do, like a set aside. So that's what people do in the RFIs. They actually try to influence that, and they tell the government, here's the contract you should go to, and hopefully you are on that contract as a prime, and you have a lot more control. You're actually directing them where to go. Now, let's say that you're not in a driver's seat and you don't know where to go and you don't have that dialogue. Well, at the very least, you should be calling the contracting officer on a fairly regular basis to see how they decided where this opportunity goes. Because that opportunity is not a real opportunity until you know how it's going to be issued and when it's going to be issued, and is it real, right? So that, like Gerald was talking about, in that process, one of the key steps, whether that's a task order under an IDIQ that you know about, or it's something that is an opportunity that came out came out as an expiring opportunity, you saw it on GovLin or some other source, some other database where it says it's an opportunity, until you have verified that this is something that a contracting officer told you is going to be issued as an 8A set aside on CIOC IDIQ vehicle in such and such time frame, you don't know if this is real. So in your pipeline, that's always going to be a question mark. So I think that the only way to make sure is to really call. Anything to add there, Gerald?
Well, yeah, they are required to, as a result of the RFI, they are required to consider small business, set aside disadvantaged veteran, all that, if they can, if it's feasible. So that's a requirement of the agency. And then also the trend that I've seen just with the agencies that I've dealt with, NASA was one of them, is there's really a push, and I don't know where the push comes from, to move toward GSA, because there has been the feeling in Congress.
I know where the push is coming from, Gerald. I know where the push is coming from. It's from GSA. They have Salesforce as their BD pipeline. They have professional business developers doing business for them. They want to be the one and only procurement agency for the government. That's where the push is coming from.
And Congress wants that too, because Congress thinks that it's the services are too pipelined, that they feud with each other. They've got duplicative procurement offices, and they're finding it's very difficult to hire and train new competent procurement officers. They have high turnover and consolidation of procurement. Congress feels like that. I mean, it goes back to the McCain-Levin Act. McCain really argued for and didn't really quite get the simplification of purchasing that he wanted to get. But I really strongly think, I think it could get to the point where there are proposals are going to be online submissions and robots scored in the first round, and then they're going to move very quickly to down select and orals. I really think that purchasing is going to change in the next decade a lot.
Okay, so I have another question here from, let's see here. I just scrolled in the wrong direction. Please repeat the name of the website. That is usaspending.gov. That's the one that Gerald was showing during the class. Now, the question is, how accurate is the information on usaspending.gov? I think it's pretty accurate. It's not cleaned up like Bloomberg, for example, has a 12-step process to clean their data. So they actually have, they remove any kind of duplication or any kind of typos in the company name and things like that. But generally, that information is entered by the government. So that information is pretty darn accurate as long as the government didn't make a typo. Now, is the question here, Gerald, how can I go about marketing to different primes to get on as a subcontractor?
Well, as I say, if you're talking about if I want to team with HP or Booz Allen or Lockheed or Honeywell, you go to their website and contact their marketing people. As I say, Lockheed, I know, has got a vendor registration portal built onto their corporate website, and there is a form you fill out and you provide information. You better have a DUNS and you better have a NICS code, and you'd better be able to say that your systems have either already been DCA audited or they're ready for audit and they're compliant, because these are basics. But yeah, and you want to also find, I think, from trade magazines and also from professional conferences, you could determine who the innovators are in the areas that you want to grow into. And the government hates risk. Okay, they say they like innovation, but actually the government never wants to be the first to try anything. So the idea is, if you could be involved with the prime in a commercial deployment of this, if you've got a piece of it and you're going to say do a smaller scale contract for Toyota, and then you're going to include that in your past performance, the government is going to go, wow, that's really nifty. Plus, Toyota already rang the bugs out of it. Let's go. So that's a good strategy.
Right. So now, are you going to share the PowerPoint, or is there any way to access it online? We actually will email the slides to everyone. So now, hi, I'm still a micro business and I'm unsure of how to find out the agency contracting rep is open to various aspects like past performance. I think that, Camille, it's a micro business. It is really, really tough. You're having to execute the business, run the business, and also do business development all at the same time. And on top of that, you have an onerous task of actually finding out who would be the person who is in charge of that opportunity. Here's a tip, right? So it is a lot of phone calls. That's just, kind of one of those things you have to get ready for, is working the phones. Essentially, the contracting rep information is available in the sources like just Google searches, right? There's a really great database that pops up in Google searches all the time. That's their way of marketing, so you can get some really good free information. If you look up a procurement, a specific procurement that you're interested in, if there's a past procurement that's connected to it, you'll come up with, oh gosh, it's just evading me right now, Gov. We have that in our list of the websites, Gerald, in the beginning, but it is the, not Govini, but the GovTribe. Yeah, GovTribe. So GovTribe is that one, the search that actually will have the contracting representative listed. That's a little bit easier to see than in USAspending.gov, although USAspending.gov will have that same research. And again, I'm just telling you free places to look for it and see who was associated with that opportunity. Then you call, and that may be just a contracting specialist and not the contracting officer. So contracting officer is the one who has the knowledge. Contracting specialist, a lot of the times, is the gatekeeper that will not give you a lot of really good information, but sometimes it's not the case, right? So you want to confirm, is that a different contracting officer in charge of this opportunity this time, or the one that was there before? So you want to confirm that. You want to confirm who is actually doing this time, and then you would have to talk to them. And yeah, sometimes you even use the past performance from your resume. Sometimes, or any other key people resumes that you're going to be bidding on the job. As a micro business, emerging business, you're allowed to do that by the federal contracting regulations. And then you can also use, like your commercial past performance. If you have any commercial past performance, you can also bring that to bear. So those are kind of your options when you're really small. I mean, they'll still all be interested in past performance. The third option is lowest price technically acceptable bids. And that is where they don't care about your past performance. They just care that you're registered in SAM and you can do the work, and you give them the lowest price. And that's a way to break into an agency and generate past performance. And then, of course, being a subcontractor, like Gerald was saying.
Now you've also got SBIRs and STTRs. You've got research grants. If
you're a research business, you have those options too. Now, often as a small business or as an 8A, we respond to RFIs. The solicitation may eventually be put out as just a small business set aside, not an 8A, or full and open. Will contracting officers provide us with feedback on the evaluation of the RFI responses so we can strategize accordingly when we respond to the solicitation? So normally, and that's Tana's question, normally you basically are in the, they will not tell you what the responses were, right? So those are private at that point. Your responses to the RFI are proprietary, but you will see a draft RFP. If there is a draft, you'll see how they're doing, and they'll solicit feedback, or they'll make an announcement about an acquisition strategy, or sometimes you hear absolutely nothing. But unfortunately, you don't get a lot of visibility as to how they end up reacting to your RFI responses unless you have a face-to-face with them. Is it any different from your experience, Joe?
The RFI is really a very broad brush, okay? There really isn't going to be much in it about your specific qualification. It's going to be company profile, it's going to be relevant past performance, and then, they've appended a dozen questions that they would like you to respond to, like why do you think this should be a small business set aside, or what's your feeling about time and materials, or those kinds of questions. Those are really kind of marketing survey questions. They're not very targeted. The main purpose of the RFI is to decide whether they can do it as a set aside, whether there are enough businesses that would fit in this category.
Yeah, I think Gerald, you're really speaking of the sources sought, right? So RFIs are a little bit more extensive. So I think that the question, the person who was asking the question was also talking about the sources sought. So you're answering her question directly. However, RFIs are actually very detailed requests for feedback from the government on specific aspects of the RFP. So a lot of the time, sometimes the government does mix them up as sources sought. and more like doing the market research. RFIs a lot of times are part market research, but also part really how would you like us to issue procurement to the industry. And so that requires a lot of brainstorming, and you have to be
Okay.
very strategic as to how you actually
So
respond to that.
comment on the vehicle and the terms.
Yeah,
okay.
that's part of it. Yeah, the terms, the requirements, a lot of times they ask you technical questions or not just the vehicle questions. So if they are asking you a lot of those things that are like very detailed questions, don't just give them marketing answers, guys. That's my big tip, and this is what government begs you not to do. Every time I speak to contracting officers, they actually go ahead and like ask you to please give them thoughtful responses, because that's how you shape the RFP. So, but yeah, the sources sought is correct. Gerald is very general. They don't give you anything, any feedback in either case. Now, what is the is the bid no bid table applicable to the bluebirds flyers? Like, as in the deals that, and for those that are on the call who don't know what bluebirds are, things that pop at the last minute and you go, oh my God, this is tasty, I gotta catch that, I gotta have it. And you just jump and start bidding on things you have done zero capture on. Does the bid no bid calculator apply to that?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, but you're going to give yourself, well, and even the calculation before that, if you're talking about the pipeline formula, you're going to give yourself a low chance of winning, maybe 1 in 10, maybe even less, but then it would depend. Your past performance experience is going to affect the weighting. And I think the bid no bid calculator is going to give you a very realistic example of whether this, just how risky this is. But I think it's like a strength weakness gait analysis. It's going to feed into your information, and if you've got some other opportunities that might be not quite much of a reach, and you can see that maybe that's, we scored 3 in this one that looks like a long shot, but we scored 8 in this other one. I mean, what's leadership going to want to do?
Absolutely. Now, what is the best marketing outreach to the contracting officers? Oh, that's a hard one. I think that the best marketing outreach to the contracting officers is to join the organization where they hang out and be on the board or a committee with them, like National Contracts Management Association, NCMA, or AFCEA, or ACT-IAC, or NDIA. So whatever is fitting your industry, where you actually get to hang out with the govies and you get to make friendships with them and form those relationships that are not necessarily this, where when they're busy, they are at work and they're not giving you a time of day, or like worse yet, at an industry day or some sort of a speed dating event with a contracting officer. You're not going to actually market much to them in those situations. I think that your best bet is really forming those relationships in the places that are outside of their regular place of work, and which is just basically professional associations or places they actually spend time in. Any other advice?
Also, any individuals that your firm has used in the past as black hats, if they're coming from other competitors or primes, or if they've come out of the agency itself and they're retired, they may be constrained by NDAs, but if they can give you insight on personalities, that's gold.
Yeah, so yeah, knowing who you're dealing with, how to approach them, using other consultants to get you to introduce to them. But the worst thing you can do is to market yourself to them. I think that the best thing you can do is to find out what opportunities they are in charge of, what makes them tick, how you would actually serve them better, and then really putting yourself in a listener and trusted advisor position, which is, a
Yeah, that
lot
comes
of
down to pain points,
skills.
like we were saying. I mean, if you know what it is that they think is preventing their agency from fulfilling its mission, or preventing them from getting the funding that they think they need, you're right in there in the conversation.
Now, is there a trick to finding out who the incumbent is on GSA STARS contracts? I don't know if there is, Vera, a trick. per se. In USA spending, you can actually look at the different task orders and different contracts. All that information after the fact, after the contract's been awarded, is public record. So it's really just teasing out, finding out the right indefinite delivery vehicle, and then drilling to that vehicle, drilling down to the awardees. I mean, and looking those up, right? So all of that information is available through paid databases more easily, and with a little bit more work through FPDS or USAspending.gov. So once you got the contract awarded, you can find it. The harder part is to find out who is the subcontractor. So that, because in the database for subcontractors, ESRS, you don't have complete information. Not everybody files a small business subcontracting report. And I mean, a lot of that data is actually not recorded. We're trying to change in the industry advocacy group that the OST is part of. We're trying to change that to get more information out there that's usable, but right now it's not the case. Now, where can we find COVID opportunities that is needed right now for COVID-19? Bloomberg government has a specific area on their website dedicated to the COVID opportunities, but sam.gov, you could just put in the key search words for COVID, and you should be able to pull up opportunities there as well. Any other tips, Gerald, on that?
Well, we had that one site, CGT, but also the acquisitions, if it's defense related, ACQ, OSD, MIL, that's the acquisitions website that goes across DoD, and there's just a ton of information there on not only on emergency opportunities, but also on mods that they're issuing mods like by the day.
Yeah, they're issuing mods.
Deviations.
And you're correct, they're issuing mods. They're also throwing a lot of work on existing vehicles, and that's probably not good news for people who are trying to penetrate and don't hold those vehicles, but they're literally, whether it's scarcely related to the scope on that vehicle or not, I mean, they're just throwing all the work to get it awarded quickly. So what Gerald was showing, what Gerald was showing on the slide talks about the streamlined acquisitions, the threshold being lifted of things that can be just simply simplified acquisition threshold lifted. Things could be just routed to the small business. Sole sources are on the rise. So anytime that you have a quick and easy way to get on the contract, that's what you're gonna basically experience in the market. The question was, does your company work with micro businesses? We only have 3 employees presently, but would like to secure our first federal contract. Yes, we do. Our GovCon incubator is for that. Okay, so people saying thank you, thank you, thank you. Lots of thank yous. Is it worth pursuing a GSA schedule if you don't already have that? That's a great question. Do your customers have a GSA, do they award under GSA schedule? If your customers award under GSA schedule a lot, then you would want to get that. If your customers don't use that a lot and they use other vehicles, you would want to get on those vehicles. Gerald, any other advice on that?
Well, I do recall that the GSA qualification application as a bidder, that application process was very complex if you felt like you wanted to be more than just a niche, because you had to focus on specific performance areas, and you had to cite past performance on each type of performance area. So that give time and research and diligent brainstorming to the responses, because it's non-trivial to apply to be a GSA qualified vendor. Yep.
And then I have a question, where within Bloomberg.gov do you find government contracting information? Well, it's all over Bloomberg.gov, right? So it's not Bloomberg.com, it's BloombergGovernment.com, bgov.com. So it's not Bloomberg.com. It's Bloomberg itself as a company has it specializes in portals for investors. So like your Wall Street types will have a subscription to Bloomberg portal. That's where you know where the cargo is on the ship and where that ship's in the ocean. You literally can like zoom in and you can have the exact information from Bloomberg, and that's what they really specialize in. And then they created Bloomberg Government, and yep. Then that's where they would essentially do something with the government information. And they have two parts to Bloomberg Government. One of them is the congressional relations part, and the other one is the government contracting part. And you actually get access to both parts when you have a subscription to that. So it's not entirely cheap, but you know it's a good system. So can Gerald give the website for acquisitions again? So I think it's the acquisitions for the DoD. Gerald, can you say that?
Oh, yeah, acqosd.mil.
Yeah.
That's DoD
ACQ
acquisitions.
for
And it's the office of
acquisitions.
the, it's office of the Office of the Deputy Secretary or something like that.
Yep. OSD. Office of the Secretary of Defense. Yeah.
And I mean, you know, and that page, I mean, it seemed like it scrolled forever, and I'm sure it changes daily.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, that's all the questions, and we've gone over quite a bit, but thank you so much for sticking with us. This was really wonderful. Thank you, Gerald, so much for sharing your wisdom and experience with us, and great information. And thank you very much, guys, for attending. Everybody, please stay safe, stay healthy. And I think we're in a great industry to be in right now today in those difficult times. And let's just make the best of it.
Well, it's a pleasure to help make the future happen.